And the reason I picked actually that I wanted Amazing to do this episode with us is because he's one of the few people who not only has played in North America and in Europe. In fact, he's even done it in NA twice. So it's not like he's only got knowledge from 2014. But I know as well, Amazing, you're also one of the people where maybe because you spent time as a player at LCS, you have a similar mentality that it sounds like Malaclips does, and I definitely do, which is that this can't all be blamed on the players. Like, it's not like, listen, Doublelift has failed to get out of tons of group stages. That isn't why all the other people failed, though. That's not why there's not another brilliant player as good as Doublelift to, you know, like, that's like sort of getting lost in the woods, in the weeds, in my opinion, if you get into that level. You've got to start off pretty high picture. So what would you say to that, Amazing? Because I know like that's like a very simplistic angle, which is as soon as Worlds ends, everyone just flames basically the players that didn't succeed. And I mean, sometimes they never even go to points beyond that. It's just you flame the players who didn't make playoffs, right? That's it.
Yeah, I mean, the issue runs way deeper than that. I think the players are kind of almost like, to me, the superficial, like, I mean, it's kind of like the symptom. They're the symptom, not really the issue, I would suppose.
Yes.
So the actual disease is running way deeper. And I mean, there's so many issues, obviously, starting with the hiring process. To me, it's like, that's where it all starts. At least, like, the whole hiring process in A is just faulty. And what I mean by that is that I think the GMs over there, and I'm not saying this was the case for one of these because my hire was obviously brilliant, to say the least. But no, I'm saying this for other teams where it seems like there's no structure with what they're doing. They don't really understand what kind of like structure they have to put in place in order to enable certain players. They simply just like throw shit at a fan to a certain extent and hope that like that roster that exists at the end of it like somehow sticks. And they don't really think about the whole structure behind it. They don't think about like the commodities they have to put in place around the players in order to make them succeed. So that's like the players, you know, obviously they're playing the same in basketball. It's probably the same in football. Is basically if the organization behind it is completely run down, they don't work well, you're going to have a bad result. So the players themselves, their performance can sometimes elevate the organization, but it will rarely like drop like go below the organization's ability to actually make proper or have proper structures in place for the players.
I'm definitely on board with this, Malcolm. Like, I also think like the first place we should start before we ever get to any player with any name performing in a game is who picked that player to be in that situation. Because think about it, right? The area where people really get lost with this is where they do just only focus on specific players. So, for example, when it was the year 2 years ago when Cloud9 made semis at Worlds, supposedly that made it fine that NA was in the situation that it's like really that result doesn't like. If you look at the Worlds, you're only talking about the top teams that qualified for Worlds. So if anything, they're just the most extreme version of if you're good or if you're bad. Like, really, where it should start with is how did we end up with these LCS teams, with these players, in this structure, this system? Like, where do you start, Malaclips? Because obviously you're coming from the team backside. Put it this way, do you go as extreme, for example, as LS, where I know LS, I mean, he already has like pretty strong opinions that, for example, you know, like you should have to be like a pro level player to be a coach in certain roles. Like obviously he goes really far the other way, but one area I definitely do agree with him is I've known a lot of the people who are in these GM positions, and I'll just say it straight up, a lot of them just weren't competent. Like they couldn't have scouted players. They wouldn't know which player to get from an ERL. They wouldn't know the difference between this player and the, you know. So like I actually would expect those people to fail if I was being honest. So where do you start in that regard? Like, for example, how do we find people who are good coaches and GMs?
Let me unpackage that further and let's like move back on the timeline and how we got to where we are now.
Yeah,
which is that when LCS started in 2013, 2014, as these orgs first started coming up, as the first GMs really started getting involved, which a lot of them are still around, was there any sense of permanency in all this? Because
you never knew how long it was going to last, right? You might be 2 years, might be done in 5 years as a game. Exactly, yeah.
Yep. So, first off, we have a lot of people left over who were probably just in the right position, like at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Who got the roles that they were in. That in itself is a big issue. I think a lot of them do tie up with coaches who have been around for a long time, who have questionable methods, I think.
Put it this way,
that
I saw a tweet that you retweeted from LS, which it sounds like is the topic you're leading to here, is one of the other problems we have is it's not just that we need to get good coaches now, it's that currently the people we would consider good coaches are the ones with the experience, but actually because it's so new as an area, just having experience doesn't mean you're good. Like, as much as it's harsh, just even if you won the championship as an LCS coach, it doesn't actually mean you're a really good person in position to get these players now in 2020.
Right. And this is also where I want to say that a lot of coaches are still learning what to do.
Yeah,
of course.
Where
yeah.
I'm learning so much every year of what to do. And to address some of the things that LS talks about, I think he's on the page when it comes to the strategic-minded people and your analysts. But there is, and there's a reason why he does specify this being a strategic coach thing, because there are other coaching skills that he's not addressing at all that are vitally important and vitally missing, right?
So,
I think when I think of staff infrastructure, there's really three main pillars that you need. You need leadership, you need the ability to teach, and you need strategic knowledge.
Yeah.
I think right now we're getting to this stage where there are coaches with good strategic knowledge, there are coaches with good leadership, there are coaches that know how to teach, but no one's going to be able to do all three.
yes.
And there's a lot that don't do any of the three.
Or as you said, don't even know it exists. Like maybe I would say, for example, even though I don't think some of them are that good at it, there's some that only know the strategic side. They're just nerds who know every matchup and what the X's and O's are. But as you say, it's even worse. They just don't even know the other side exists. Like they expect leadership to come from players or ownership or I agree with you. Like that's another area that is unfair, by the way. Is there shouldn't be an expectation that one guy can do all those jobs even necessarily. Because as we're saying, no one's been training for that. We haven't been selecting for that. We haven't even been looking for that generally. We're just trying to find people who could do pick ban, essentially. That's where it started as a role.
I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
I think that the whole thing about leadership and I think accountability is kind of the thing. I would add accountability to the leadership part, where I think a lot of coaches don't feel are not held accountable for the performance of the players. They're not being held accountable for the project because they're basically side hires. They're not like main hires in the way that they lead the project. They're legitimately just like on the sidelines watching the players perform, and the players basically dictate what's happening. So to a certain extent, like what I feel is like, I'm actually like, I guess that's the overarching point now I think about it, actually is the accountability within the NA scene. I think like within the GMs, within the coaches, within the ownership. So it feels like everyone is just pushing away the entire like structure, and they're like, okay, like whatever, we hire players, they're gonna do whatever, and if they win, then it's good, you know, we look good. If they lose, it's on them, you know, or whatever it is. So it seems like that the accountability part is like this, that no one from the top down is like, okay, we're at fault, we have to change something, and then like no one, even the hires afterwards, like the coaches and GMs are not even voicing the same thing. So no one feels accountable, and no one is being held accountable at all. You know, besides maybe in a few orgs where TSM, for example, where I do think that Reggie in the beginning really held himself accountable for everything that happened.
Yeah, I think this is actually pretty much the biggest issue in NA is the people at the top are not holding themselves responsible for everything that's happening beneath them. Yep. And they pass the buck on. I mean, we're talking about coaches, but the fact is coaches are probably in the most vulnerable position.
Yes.
And what happens, and I've decoded this myself, just having been on the periphery of esports and then entering it full time, you know, over the years. There's a lot of politics at play that's the result of this, because coaches have zero job security, and that starts causing some odd bedfellow relationships. That's causing some weird issues in NA.
I mean, you have all the cliques in the teams and stuff, and you never know. Like if one guy's unkickable, suddenly he becomes like a tyrant, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Yeah, of course, there's a lot of things that. But it's weird. I think people would be shocked if they knew the behind the scenes, like relationships in some teams, and how certain players just can't be, you know, questioned or told what to do. And yeah, that is tough. But the problem is, from the outside, it looks like the coach has all the power, doesn't it?